Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them so you can build it yourself.
This episode of the Predictable Revenue Podcast is brought to you by our sales coaching and consulting services. Are you looking to create repeatable, scalable, and predictable revenue? We've helped thousands of companies grow their business with tailored expert advice backed by testing to ensure they establish the best practices that will work for them. Head over to bit.ly/predictable coaching to learn more.
Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Collin Stewart. Today, I'm joined or rejoined by Matt Roberts. I think he was Matthew last time, and now he's Matt. He's still leading sales development over at Mosaic, and we are going to talk about hyper-focused prospecting. Matt, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Collin. I'm glad that we made this change just a second ago from Matthew to Matt. I'm excited to be here as a new first name.
It's a new era. We're rebranding Matthew to Matt, and big change is coming. Today we're talking about. I always look for in the episodes when I'm trying to figure out, what do we talk about? I'm like, what is the unique conversation that we can have that I haven't had anywhere else, and what is that kind of unique perspective? And I think one of the things a lot of people that are new to sales development struggle with is, how many times can I email somebody? Once I've emailed them once, how do I know what to say? And I think the thing that turns a lot of companies off of sales development is they have a really small market and they're wondering, well, how do I keep this going? I'm curious, before we jump into all of the details, how big is the team? How big is the market? Just to provide some context for everybody.
Absolutely. And again, I think this would be fascinating to go back if I said anything about these similar questions in our past conversation, just to see how much has changed. The current team right now, we have 9 BDRs on the team. We have about 8,000 accounts that we're hyper-focused on. This has changed from, originally 3 BDRs, and then it was 5, and then it was 11, and then we went to 9. So that size has changed, as well as the accounts that we are hyper-focused on. When I first started, it was Free Reign. I think it was 100,000. Then it went to 25,000, and then it went to 15, and now we're looking at 8. So 9 reps, 8,000 accounts, and it's changed probably every 2 or 3 quarters since I've been at Mosaic.
That's awesome. I mean, the thing that is crazy is going from, I couldn't imagine being in the sales development seat, going from like, okay, we've got a wide open market, 100,000 to 8,000. Like the pressure for the reps to perform. And not only did you do that, but you also 3x the size of your team. What were you doing before, and what had to change in order to still have a productive team at 9 reps and 8,000 total accounts?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think part of it you can look at in different ways, right? It's the way that it's like framed, because obviously as a sales dev leader, I have to frame it in the right way for my reps without them immediately turning this into a doomsday scenario. So I'd say, like, first and foremost, the reasons for these changes, right, are us looking big picture. And by big picture, I mean revenue and what's closing. And so we start really large because we don't know what we're doing, and we're creating something from scratch, which started October of 2022. I don't even know what year it is anymore. Maybe it's 2021. I don't know. Yeah, 2021. So I come here. We don't have really an ICP. We have customers, but we haven't done any outbound. So they've been inbound. They've been referral. So we have to start somewhere. And what that means is, like, let's book some meetings. Let's have some conversations. Let's take what data we have based off our whatever, I don't even remember the number, 50 customers, 35 customers, something, and create a hypothesis and turn this into a science experiment. So we started very, very large, cast that giant net. You have all these, personas and ICPs that you think are accurate that you're soon going to realize are not. And from there, you just consistently iterate with the data that you have. And, it starts with booking a meeting. That's your, leading success metric. Then it changes to opportunities created. And then you start to back up, and whether you're comping on this or the comp and the commission structure stays the same, you start looking at, like, what's actually closing and turning into revenue for the company. So in those iterations, you're shifting and again, usually, unless your product is really flying at an insane speed, or if it's something that is like agnostic, it usually does get a little bit sharper on your focus because you're dialing it in. And for ourselves specifically, it's just really, really dialed into this specific subset of 8,000 accounts. But the good thing there, and again, from a framing perspective, even though the team is growing, what you look at it from the perspective is more personalization, more prioritization of the right people, which again, as a sales rep, you don't want to spend time on something that's not going to give you the best chance at booking that meeting or creating that opportunity. And so therefore, like, while the numbers have gotten smaller for who we're reaching out to and the team has grown, the reality is our work has gotten so much more quality. It's gotten so much better. We've gotten so much more efficient. And because of that, you're looking at it from a good aspect of my work is just, again, a higher level of quality than it used to be. I have a higher chance of booking every single account that I work than I used to. And therefore, there's no wasted calories, and we're putting all of our efforts in the right direction, in the right spot at the right time. And then, you're kind of handling everything that's in your control.
It's amazing, man. Like, it's even the quality bar. It sounds like you've really stepped that up in a big way, which is, really encouraging. I think it's got to be one of the things that people are afraid of most is like, oh, if I've sent them an email once, I can't really go back to them. And like, if you only have 1,200 accounts, first, maybe I want to talk about, I do want to talk about, get into like what you're doing and what, how you organize the, following up and resequencing and your thoughts on that. Can you just speak to, as in a level of detail as you're comfortable, performance of the, or output of the SDR team? Did it change dramatically? Did you go from booking, a whole bunch of meetings every month that were kind of medium quality to like a smaller number? Like, did that output change dramatically? Did the math change? Like, what was that? Did that transition look like?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because that is super interesting. So I'd say the biggest change that we made was last Q2, and that was changing from removing a lot of like a good chunk of accounts based on employee size. We moved up a little bit from like our bottom indicator, and we moved down a good chunk from our top. So more specific, we went from like 10 to 1,000 to 50 to 500, which is a pretty drastic change. There's a lot in that 10 to 50 bucket, and there's a lot in that 500 to 1,000 bucket. And so that was pretty drastic. Mm-hmm. We saw like that first month, second month, obviously like a not a huge drop, but like a decent drop in how many opportunities were created by each rep. But to your point, the quality was there. And the quality, I mean, the pipeline that was generated. So we actually ended up closing more revenue at obviously a higher close rate, which again, that's the impact that you want to make. Like, again, from a commission plan standpoint, from the data that I'm looking at of meetings booked, opportunities created, pipeline generated, like that's really what we see kind of at the front, because it's what, again, we have control over. And, we're not running the whole sales cycle. We're not closing. So that's like our tightest bucket of contribution. But at the end of the day, what's important to my CEO and to our board is that revenue closing. And you could see that huge spike from that, Q4, Q1 to Q2, which was like fascinating. So that was a very good indicator of like, okay, yeah, we made this change. Even if pipeline gen and like opportunities created, meetings book look the same, or even if they dip a little bit, like that revenue number's higher, that's really what's more important at the end of the day. So we did see that change. And so to your point, like, yeah, that was something that we noticed probably Q2, Q3, but funny enough, and we're just wrapping up, February right now. Two of our reps have had our second and our third highest all-time month ops created in February of this month, which is like, we're talking about getting more and more and more focused on our accounts, losing less accounts. But like I was saying earlier, the focus is and the prioritization is on the right accounts, the right people, the timing's probably better. And therefore the like success metrics are actually higher, which is kind of bizarre. And again, not saying across the board, I think from a aspect of opportunities created We also have half of our team is ramping right now, which is a whole other fun topic that we could go into. But I think it's probably like in the top five or top six all-time months since I've been here. And we're talking almost 3 years. So yeah, like it's still not as drastic as I would say of like, yeah, wow, we used to book 100 meetings and now we're booking 50. It's nothing like that. We're still having a lot of success because, again, we're putting our calories and our resources in the right spot and giving ourselves a better chance to succeed than we would if we, let's say mass blast or anything like that, but spread ourselves very thin. We're just going really, really deep on the areas that we know we have success. And it's definitely playing out in the way that we had hoped and anticipated.
Love it, man. I'm curious what obviously the targeting changed, right? And that was kind of, I imagine maybe a little bit handed down, maybe a little bit you were working together on like, this is how we're building, the target account lists. What changed from let's start with prioritization, right? Because I think it sounds like there's two big changes. There's how they decide which accounts and which contacts to go after, one, and then two, the method they use to reach them. And so let's start with how they prioritize their accounts and contacts, and then we could talk about method. Sound good?
Yeah. It's a great question. And one, you kind of touched on it, right? Like as far as these changes, I'd say the best thing about it is it has been extremely collaborative. I know that's not the case everywhere. Sometimes, you get the Slack or the Zoom or whatever it is, and you're on with your CEO or VP of sales or something, and it's hey, this is what we're doing, and you have to go, crap, okay. This is a like full-on collaborative effort between myself, our head of ops and strategy, George, our head of marketing, Ryan, our CEO, our COO, like all hands on deck. Let's figure it out. So like that, I think, again, just allows me to be more confident and comfortable too, because it isn't I'm being told this is where we're going and not having an input. It's like a group effort to get there. So that's exciting. But to boil it to your next question, another really great aspect is what we're trying to figure out through our tiering. So we've done multiple iterations of our account tiering. And again, that's changed 3 or 4 times since we first created it. The first stab was like one of the first things I actually did when I came over to Mosaic. And that was, again, looking at the data of who are our customers that are good and happy and successful and not, trying to churn. And we're looking at their, series fundraise, their employee size, their geo, their tech stack, their, all these other information that we're getting from Clearbit and whatever else, Crunchbase, and building that tiering. And if you look at that tiering now, and it is actually fun, I do it sometimes to just kind of laugh and also just pull away whatever hypothesis I can. Look at the tiering from there to what we changed in 2022 to which we changed in 2023 to what we just rolled out a few weeks ago for 2024. It's all across the board. It's changed everywhere. Like what was a tier 1 then is a tier 7 or 8 now. And you see them flip. Even the 2023 to show how like you are making iterations, but there can still be drastic changes. There are tier 1 accounts in 2023 that are now tier 8 in 2024. And vice versa. There's tier 7 accounts from 2023 that are tier 1 accounts now. And it's like, what changed in that year? Well, a ton. So we are constantly re-tiering our accounts. And once you have re-tiered those accounts, there's obviously the prioritization of like a tier 1 is hopefully better than a tier 2, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means it has the signals to say that it's better. But in reality, there's so much nuance and gray area within there that like there might be a tier 4, tier 5 that actually has like intent signals that make it just as good, if not better than a tier 1 account. So we do have our tiering on each account, but we also prioritize based on triggers that are not like pulled into our Salesforce instance. And what I mean by that is a new hire. So you could be a tier 5, 6, 7 account. If you just hired a CFO, you're the most important account in my name right now. You're more important than you just being a tier 1 account because you check all these boxes. Fundraising is obviously a good one as well. That has a lag to it because fundraising is part of what goes into our tiering. But if you raise a Series B today, I'm not going to immediately see that on my report. It might be a little bit lagged, but you're immediately going to be my number 2 most popular account. Qualified data, intent data and stuff that is like, you're on my site right now, clicking around, like these sort of triggers are actually above what is our tiering itself. So from a prioritization standpoint, we're looking at stuff that's happening in real time, intent data, new hires, hiring for roles, working through all that list, because again, it's like speed to lead, what's relevant. And then once you've gone through it, now I'm just kind of looking at, you're just a tier 1 account because you've checked all these boxes.
Gotcha. If I could kind of parrot it back to you, it sounds like it's a combination of, and there's 8 tiers. We're not going to go into all of them, but it sounds like a combination of your sort of traditional ICP persona data where you break it down and, small, medium, large. And I imagine there's more grades to it, but let's just for the purposes of the podcast say small, medium, large. And then on top of that is your signals of, hey, I think this person's in a more likely to be in a buying mode right now. And then those signals can bump up a tier 5 into a tier 1 right away because they're most likely to buy. And so when your SDRs are working their accounts and working their contacts, you're prioritizing the sort of things that are more timely. Is that kind of beautiful? I'm curious, and you've talked about hiring, we've talked about fundraising. What other kind of signals that are you using to reprioritize or bump things up into different tiers?
Yeah, good question. So to your point, if someone just started at that company, that's our number 1 indicator. Fundraising, number 2. Number 3 would be, and this is where I can get even more granular within number 3. It's just, intent data that we have from Qualified, which is coming from like 6 Sense, Clearbit, certain aspects that they've, signed up for on our own page, like our own first party data, things that they're looking around online that are, again, good buying signals that we know. That puts them very high up our list as well. Other things like user gem style searches, right? So obviously if you're coming from a customer of ours in the finance department and now you're at a new company that blends in with the new hires in general, you're like the cream of the crop, right? You're a new hire and you've used Mosaic in the past. That's our bread and butter. Outside of that, some of the other things that might not be as like real time from an intent aspect are, finance team size, growth metrics on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which again, like are very hard to pull within Salesforce. We do actually have a tool out there that I'm going to shout out called Account Aim that we just started reaching out to, and they've been able to like help us and provide a lot of that data. So I can say out of those 8,000 accounts, we want to see every single one that's grown over 20% in the last 6 months, or over 50% in the last year, and they can go out, pull that data and like flag it to us daily, which has been really helpful. 1 to 2 person finance.
What's the website?
Countaim.com. It's guys that came over from Sendoso. They were like the operations team at Sendoso. They just started this. So we've been able to work with them. They're really, really good. Tool's awesome. And again, I think like what we realized very quickly too in all of this research, and we recently got a head of finance who's been amazing and dove in with all this data and like try to create also like really good hypotheses, is the success of a BDR here at Mosaic, at least, is really closely tied to how they prioritize the accounts that they're working, which is hard to like say that's the only reason, but it does take a large chunk. Like we have the same sequences, a lot of the plays are the same, but some people were prioritizing on the wrong accounts. And again, that's also why we try to trim it down to be so focused, is that you make less mistakes. I give you 10,000 accounts. It's a lot easier to get lost in the sauce than if I give you 1,000 accounts that we have eliminated those 9,000 not great fits. But even in that 1,000, there's going to be 100 accounts that are better than the other 900. And so we're just trying to, again, eliminate and make it as cookie cutter and like spoon fed as possible to be like, Collin, these are the accounts that you want to spend time on. And you know what to say to them, and you have the playbooks to get there and which channels to use XYZ. But the prioritization of the accounts has been like the huge impact of like which BDRs are doing 200% of quota month over month for someone who's like struggling to get there.
Yeah, you might be one of the first people who have called out intent data as something that's been useful. Mm-hmm. I think I ask every sales dev leader that comes on the show, hey, off camera or off recording.
Yeah.
Is it good? And everybody kind of gives the like, is the recording off? And then we have a real conversation.
I love that.
So this factors into the intent data. We don't have to talk about vendors or anything, but let's say intent data that you can purchase from data providers. You're actually using it in your tiering system.
Yeah. So great question. And I think it's interesting that you brought that up. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I was on a webinar earlier this morning that was all about intent data. And we were like in this kind of echo chamber where we were saying the same things. And to your point, and I probably fell in this bucket a year or two ago. It's one of those things which, again, I already said this word, like iterating. It's like, if you expect intent data to just be we have intent data, we're better now. No, you have to create a hypothesis, and realistically, unless you get extremely lucky, it's not going to be right. You're going to have all these false negatives of like focusing on things that you think are good buying signals, but in reality are not. What you need to do is go back every, quarter or 2 quarters and look at like your closed won revenue and say, what buying signals did they have? And like constantly be tweaking that. And then on top of it, once you're changing this all the time, you also need to then go layers deeper and say, okay, how are our channels working? What are we doing to leverage the messaging? What is the workflow and the process of our BDR and SDR org? There's so many different levers. So it's very easy to be like, oh yeah, we didn't see the lift from intent data that we wanted, therefore it doesn't work. When in reality, it's, well, no, you just have to continue iterating because it is there. And I know we talked about like fishing in this small pond, which we've been fishing in over and over and over. The point isn't just keep throwing in the same lure or the same bait over and over to catch the fish. It's you're constantly changing things. And once you start seeing success, obviously you run through that as best you can, but then it's going to change and you need to kind of go back to the drawing board, figure things out, and then go hit it again. So yeah, it's funny. Intent data, I think for us has been very, very valuable because we do have a small pond, and therefore everything has to be very personalized and relevant and timely, because we don't have the ability to say, we're getting a ton of inbound leads, we can keep reaching out to people, or I have 10,000 more accounts I can go after. It's like, to your point, we're re-sequencing accounts constantly. We're hitting up people that we've worked for 2 years and they finally come in, which is crazy. We actually also pulled some data. On average, it takes 57 touches to book a meeting. That's calls, that's emails. Don't think that's LinkedIn, just calls and emails. 57. It also, I throw you into a sequence for you to become an opportunity, 6 months on average. So average is average. There's a lot that take a lot longer. And like I said, we have BDRs who, and I love this, I always actually send the Founder movie, and I'm not sure if you've seen it, with Michael Keaton about Ray Kroc, or the founder of McDonald's. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, it's awesome. But he has this quote about persistence that he's like giving that speech, and you can go find it on YouTube, but he's like, persistence is better than genius, and it's better than luck, and it's better than blah, 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 blah. And I always toss that thing out there when people are like, oh, I finally got this person to book a meeting, and I've been working them for 18 months or 20 months or whatever. And I'm like, that's great. Because again, on the outbound side, regardless of intent, regardless of our prioritization, at the end of the day, you're a person on the other side of that phone, email, LinkedIn, and you have a million other priorities, and a cold email, a cold call, a cold LinkedIn outreach is only as like important or valuable as where you're at in your life, in your work environment. And so if you're not persistent with these people, everything else doesn't matter. You could do the perfect email, but you're like, hey, it's not relevant right now, or I have personal stuff going on, or I have 50 million projects. Like, that's the last thing I care about. You stay on top of them and continue to just like add value, be relevant, share things that aren't annoying, and just like asking for stuff. Eventually they should come through, or they'll respond and tell you a good reason as to why it's not a good fit right now. And then you can continue to follow up until either they tell you to F off or they take a meeting. Those are the only options.
Yeah. Are those your actual statuses? Meeting booked or FOAD?
It is. Like, without it actually being in Salesforce, that is how every one-on-one goes. They don't tell you to F off, or they don't take a meeting, and they're engaging with you. They're on a hit list, and they're there forever. It's like the only way out of like, gangs and stuff. They're like, you're in here until you die. The mafia. It's like, that's kind of how it is. It's you book a meeting with this person, or they block you on every single channel. Those are your two ways of getting that person off of your list.
Trying to find a way to work a Liam Neeson quote in there because it feels very. I have a certain set of skills. Yes. I want to talk about these 57 attempts because I think if anything, we've looked at what's happened in sales development over the last number of years, and I think if anything, sequences have gotten shorter. I remember in 2015, the common knowledge was you got to send a 12-touch or 12-step email sequence minimum, layer in, triple touch and, social like calls and this and that. And I think what we saw in the last 5 years is email's gotten much harder. And so people may be prioritized more towards calls. Emails have gotten shorter, or email, sequences have gotten much shorter. What is in these 57 attempts that over 6 months that you're able to execute this and people don't hate you? Like how? Teach me, Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that because you kind of just mentioned this a second ago when we were talking about something else, but like it's value, it's content, there's no ask for times, there's no ask for, meeting. It's, hey, here's something that I saw, here's something that you posted about, here's something about your company, here's something, whatever. Again, like a reason that I'm reaching out to you. It's based on that. I'm expecting this is the situation. Here's a piece of content that kind of goes over that. Does this sound interesting? Is this relevant? Is this something that you thought about before? It's those are the touch points. And like in there, are there bumps and things that are automated? Of course there are. You have to be scalable. Like I always say we're kind of in that weird blend where it's like we're not selling to Fortune 500, but it's closer to that than it is to just mass blasting 100,000 accounts. And so there is automation because it has to be scalable, and they're not going to write 150 handcrafted emails every day. That's not what they're doing. But most first touches, and again, when you're highly engaging, well, I'll pull it back a second. I've used this analogy a lot. I'm curious if I use this on the last one. Who knows? Maybe we'll go find it. But I tell like new reps this all the time. This is how I look at the BDR function. It's like marketing is chum that they throw off the boat. Fish start coming in, whatever. A sequence is the giant net that you throw into the water that has the chums kind of all been there. Gets kind of caught in that giant net. And then our one-off templates, personalized, like really truly personalized and relevant outreach is like a spear or a giant lure that you throw in at the right fish that you're like highly focused on because it looks like the fish that you want and it's in that net and it's been there from the chum. So with that said, the 57 touch points, some of them are coming from sequence, but a lot of them are because you've shown that you're interested based on, you're on our website, you're downloading stuff, you're opening our emails a ton of times. Maybe I've talked to you in the past. Maybe you chatted with me on LinkedIn, or you're just an easy person to personalize and be relevant on because of all these other things. And so like they're just really fixating on those people, but it's all value add. It's all sharing content, sharing resources. And then at the end of the day too, obviously it's a lot of just follow up because of timing. And like, that's the reality. The amount of people who say, hey, reach out next quarter, you nurture them. And then they come to that next quarter and like, hey, still not a good time. It's like, you're still trying to build that urgency. And at the end of the day, like you're not going to kill it because hopefully it comes through at some point. It's fanatical prospecting, right? Like everything I do today I'm going to see it in 60 days, 90 days. So you're constantly building that pipeline out in the future as well. And so that's why, 6 months, 57 touches on average. Obviously, we'd love to have it 10, but the reality is like, it just doesn't happen. Like, does a first touch come through and book a meeting? Absolutely. Does it happen all the time? No. Just the same way that it sometimes takes 100 touches.
So many questions, so many places to go. How long does it take a new SDR to book their first meeting? Now 6 months and 57 touches?
Great question. The fastest has been 2 days. I'd say on average, it takes probably within their like first 2 or 3 weeks. And that's not first 2 or 3 weeks of like doing the BDR job. That's just first 2 or 3 weeks from the start date. And their first 5 or 6 days are learning our space, learning who we are, meeting the team, very kind of low key. By day 5 or day 6, it's like, hey, let's put an account into sequence and kind of start to ramp up from there. But again, with email deliverability and all that stuff, it's a very slow ramp. And the first 2 days meeting being booked was somebody who had already come from that space. And so they had like a kind of referral type situation, which again, I always tell people that, right? If you come to a new company, immediately hit up your current network and anybody that you can to book a meeting. So I'm waiting for it to happen the first day. Like, cool. My brother is a CFO at one of our target accounts. Meeting booked, first hour. But outside of that, yeah, about 2 or 3 weeks.
If an SDR booked a meeting, got you an intro, set a meeting in the interview process, is that an automatic hire?
People have bragged that they could, or like, oh, I have a bunch of people, but what ends up happening, and again, no surprise here because we said 8,000 accounts, it's not something that we can sell to. So it's not an account that we're like, yeah, great. Like you might have all the right people, but those are not accounts that we are targeting. And I was, in that same bucket. I think I spoke with our CEO and I came on, I was like, oh, I got all these friends here and here and here that work in finance. And he was like, yeah, those are all too big. We can't sell to Box and blah. And I was like, okay. So, yeah. Doesn't happen, sadly.
Okay. Fair enough. So the range is like 2 days, but on it, we're talking about like a couple of weeks to get their first one on average, or 5 days to a couple of weeks to get their first one.
Yeah.
We've got, if I'm an SDR that works for you, I've got, sounds like 8 different tiers. What does my day-to-day look like? Like, am I, to your point, I'm not writing 150 personalized emails. I'm obviously not sending 150, I'm probably not sending 150 emails total every day. What are some stats? Like, what does a day in the life look like? What are they doing? What are they calling? What are they personalizing? Where do they spend their time?
Yeah, great question. So, we always have some sort of sync or huddle. And like, I think that's just valuable in the remote world, like, especially on the SDR side, whether it's just more junior or I think, and again, it seems to be this way across the board. And I've been very lucky to have awesome teams and leaders as well that it seems that, but like, it's a really, really, really big teamwork makes the dream work culture. I think at like any SDR, BDR org, more so than on an AE side, to be honest, right? Like an AE is a little bit easier to be like the lone shark killer because you just, I'm carrying my bag. I already done this for a while, probably. I'm a little bit like later or like, middle of my career. BDR side, you got to have that culture. So it's like always start with a sync, talk through a bunch of stuff. Then immediately they're going to go into like their, actionable revenue generating activities, which are following up with people who've obviously responded to me, like very basic stuff. But then once they're kind of done with the like no brainers of reaching out to people who have responded and called the people that are really low hanging fruit for whatever reason, it's digging into all of that high engaging prospect stuff. Which people have opened my emails multiple times, which people have been visiting our website, who has maybe like downloaded any sort of content, who's somebody that was one of those categories that I haven't reached out to in the last 4, 5, 6, 7 days that I can then go and again research again. I'm popping back on Collin's LinkedIn and looking at if he's posted anything new or if anything changed at his company because he was a high engager, last week. So you're really manually digging through a lot of that or getting that information flagged to you in a few different locations and sending out, very hyper personalized messages there. So that's going to probably be 30 to 50 messages like that are a little bit more personalized. And again, the reason I'm setting those is because there's a higher priority that you book something because you've already shown the right attitude, right? Like when people talk about personalizing that first email, again, in the email deliverability world where things are blocked and nothing's delivered and spam and filtered out, it's like, am I going to spend a bunch of time to like really personalize your first touch knowing that it could just go straight to the spam? Like, no, I'm going to do a scalable, relevant, personalized first message that isn't like canned junk that actually shows like, this is to me, Collin Stewart, because of the stuff that we are doing in it. But the other stuff I'm going to spend more time because, Collin's opened every single one of my emails 2 or 3 times. So like, that's worth the squeeze, right? Like that's worth my effort here. So that's like probably 75, 80% of their day. Maybe even more now, to be honest. And that's calls, LinkedIn's, emails, depending on the channel. Obviously, that makes the most sense. Or testing all 3 if we don't know which one that prospect is privy to. Then the second or like the last half of the day, which used to be probably more of like a 30%. And now shout out again, Account Aim, because of them and because of like our tiering and our prioritization that we've done on the accounts. The last 10% of the day is adding in that top of the funnel and getting things to go out the next day. And when we are adding in those accounts, we're prioritizing based on the stuff that we just talked about. So it's like, cool, now I'm going to go in, see any of the new hires that came in today to my accounts. Okay, cool, there's 4 or 5. I'm hitting all those accounts. I'm putting them into sequence. Those are starting going out tomorrow morning. And then it's rinse and repeat.
Got it. And so account aim is you add all your data in to account aim, and then it does the prioritization, or does it provide the data and the prioritization and the scoring mechanism and all that? Like, how does that? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So the way that we've used it is they do pull our Salesforce data so that we can prioritize the way that we want. And they have been very, very helpful to offering up suggestions, best practices, but also, how do you want these to be prioritized for your reps? And then they have also done some like scraping for us as well. So like I mentioned, I want to really hyper focus on all accounts that are growing 20% in the last 6 months or more, 50% in the last year or more. And so they've actually gone out, scraped that data for us, put it into our Salesforce instance so that they can then flag those. Similarly, I want to know which companies have 1 to 3 people in their finance department, because if it's 0, that's not a good sign for us. If it's 4 or 5, it's also not the best sign for us. So in that 1 to 3 range, that's also where I really want to hyper focus our attention. And so they're able to do that as well. And the way we started it was once a week, they would just drop 25 accounts. So it's a here, Collin, here's your top 25 accounts based on the way that I have set up everything. And again, it's for all the BDRs. They are not there to make that decision themselves of how they want to set it up. It's coming from myself, from George, from Ryan. And what we're moving to now, because we're getting in a better spot with it and we want to clean through a little bit more, is we're doing 10 every single day. And so again, it eliminates that chunk that used to have to be found kind of more manually by looking in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, by looking in Salesforce and building reports. Now it's like, hey, Collin, boom, here's your 10 accounts. Now at the end of the day, I'm just going to go check those out, and it's telling me why this one is the most important, why this one's the second most important. And I'm just going to go in and grab the right people and put them in sequence, do a little bit of personalization, and knock those out.
Gotcha. So first 80% of the day is call, email, LinkedIn, prospecting. And it's a variety of, the personalized email, the phone calls, the standard LinkedIn stuff. The last 10% of the day is looking at those 10 accounts that I got, finding the right people, writing a personalized email to all of them. And that's the last kind of half hour of the day.
Yeah, probably, again, like that used to probably take anywhere from 1 to 2.5 hours. And now, yeah, it's probably about an hour.
Nice. That's great, man. And the net result has been, the same or more meetings and a significantly like 10x, 12x smaller, don't check my math on that, account base that you're going after.
Yeah. And again, like hyper focus on the right accounts, and then within those 8,000, prioritizing them in a certain way. With that said, I will obviously mention, like, as every SaaS company, there is either we're moving up market or we're serving a new industry, because we do understand you can't fish in the same pond forever. But we do feel like okay with the current pond that we're fishing in. But we are like opening up and exploring new avenues, and the way that we are testing those, obviously, again, very similar. Who comes inbound the most? Who are we actually closing that's not this specific subset that we're doing? And we're taking our first hypothesis and guess. It's gone okay. It's gone actually a little bit around where we expected it to be. So not a lot better, but definitely not worse, which is, I guess, okay to see. And now we're toying around with the idea of just kind of like flat out opening a lot of it, which is sometimes scary. And I think a little bit more scary on the account executive side, because now they're like, well, yeah, I have really good quality pipeline and I always want more pipeline, but I don't want bad pipeline. So we'll see how that experiment goes. We haven't started it just yet. I'll let you know. But that will allow us to explore what is like the next vertical or industry, or can we move up market a little bit more? Which again, our pond, knock on wood, should actually get bigger, and this 8,000 should be the absolute floor. If it goes a little bit deeper down, then I probably am, and I don't have a job anymore, maybe.
I don't know, man. It sounds like you built a system that if you step away, like things, not to say that everybody would fall apart without you, but it sounds like a fairly complex system that I'm not sure I would want to step into cold.
Yeah, you never know.
Fair. I always love the conversation. I really appreciate you sharing, all the deep details with us. If somebody's listening and they're going, geez, I want to pick this guy's brain. I want to, I've got a finance team. Maybe I'm in the sweet spot, or I'm just an SDR and I want to work for Matt. What's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, LinkedIn for sure. When it came out of my or was in my head before I said LinkedIn, I was almost like, hit me up on Instagram. It's like, well, no, don't do that. That'd be bizarre. LinkedIn, yeah. Matthew Roberts, Mosaic. It's probably the easiest way to find me. I love always chatting with anybody, whether you're a BDR looking for a role, whether you're a non-sales rep that is looking to get into tech sales, or yes, absolutely. Hey, I'm a founder, or I'm someone in finance, or I work in sales or marketing and I absolutely hate our finance formulas and structures and the Excel spreadsheet that someone sends me when they talk about headcount planning. So anybody who wants to reach out, please do.
Right on. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. We'll definitely have you back to recap on this and see how the opening up new markets go. And yeah, man, really appreciate it.
Yeah, Collin, always a pleasure. I hope that the lag and the bad connection wasn't too choppy. And if it was, then maybe it just gets a little bit of that curious energy going for people. And like, I really wanted to hear the rest of that sentence. And then they are forced to reach out to me. So I appreciate you and the time. And hopefully this was valuable for somebody out there.
You got it, man. I enjoyed it. I definitely learned, and I'm going to take a few things away already. So thank you for coming on the show. Again, we'll definitely have you back. And thanks to everybody for listening. We'll see you all next week.